Hi there, this is Jen, and thanks for joining me on the Scrapbook Pal YouTube channel today. Today I'm going to make one card on screen, and then I have another card that's pretty much the same layout that I'm going to share as well. This is a super fun set by Hero Arts. They're actually two separate sets. The first one I'm going to use is this die set called Sea Creatures. You've got a bunch of different little sea creatures and then some shells and starfish. And then the other set I'm using is a stamp and die set called Sea Quotes. And I'm going to start out, my main paper that I'm using is 5 by 3 3/4, and that is where I'm going to place my sea paper, I guess you could say. The paper I'm using right now is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I'm just taking this plastic tool from Sizzix. I've had it in my stash for quite a while. It's fairly old, to make waves, but you can use wave dies, you can use hill dies, you can make your own kind of template with waves on it to create the waves. I just thought this would be kind of fun to get this out and see what I could do with it. And so I'm going to cut 5 pieces of paper, or 5 waves in all, actually 4 waves, and one of them is going to be the sand. And so I'm going to take kind of this really light teal paper and take my craft knife, and I'm just running that right along this edge and cutting the paper. And once I've got all of the waves done, I will grab a piece of like tan cardstock and create the a bottom portion. And the reason I'm starting out with a piece of 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 cardstock to cut from is to make sure that I have the paper long enough where it will hang over my white piece of paper, which is that 5 by 3 3/4, just so I wouldn't have to worry about making sure all of the strips were even. And then once I have that done, I'm going to take the blue cardstock, or the teal cardstock, and I'm going to take some Distress Oxide in Salvaged Patina and a finger dauber, and on both sides of that curvy wave I'm going to go ahead and use that finger dauber and apply a little bit of the ink. And then for the sand portion, the tan cardstock, I'm using tea dye, and I'm taking the dauber and just doing the same thing, just going along the top, and I'm not worried about the bottom because that's going to be cut off. And then I'm going to start applying my waves to my card. And so the first one, I'm going to have it hang over the top of the card just a little bit to make sure that I can fit all of my pieces of paper. If you want to measure this out, that would probably help. But I just went ahead and kind of eyeballed it to make sure that I had all my pieces. And I did kind of test this out before I actually started creating the card to kind of get an idea of how many strips I would need. And so I'm just going to put the adhesive, and I'm not putting adhesive over the entire piece of paper, just because I wanted to make sure that there was a little bit of room in case I wanted to insert any of those sea elements and kind of tuck those behind the waves. I didn't end up doing that, but that's why I just put the adhesive on the center portion of the paper. And there's not a lot of room left for my sand, so it's going to overlap the waves a little bit, and that will also hang off the end as well. And then I'll go ahead and trim off all of that excess. And you can do this with scissors, but I am not a straight cutter, and so I prefer to go ahead and get my trimmer out. And so I'm just grabbing my guillotine trimmer and cutting anything that hangs over my white piece of paper. And then once I have that done, I'm going to add a little bit of splatter, and I'm going to add a little bit of brown splatter to the bottom. And so I went ahead and took a piece of packaging and covered up the teal cardstock just to make sure that I didn't get any of that splatter on that portion. So I'm going to go ahead and take a little bit of that tea dye distress ink and put it on my craft mat, and then spritz it with some water, and then splatter the bottom of the card. And then I'm going to do the same thing using the Distress Oxide in Salvaged Patina. I'll go ahead and take that and put it on my craft mat, spritz that with some water, and then I will go ahead and splatter that over the entire card. And then I'm using some gold Stickles to create a splatter. So I'm just going to put a little bit of that on my craft mat and then wet it down and then test it out and see if it gives me that little bit of splatter. And then I'll go ahead and splatter that over the entire card. And then to give the sand that little bit of sparkle that you see in the sand at the beach, I'm just pouncing my brush in the Stickles and then pouncing it over the tan portion of the card or the sand to give that little bit of sparkle and shine. And then I'm going to take that same gold Stickles and fill in the space between those pieces of cardstock. So I'm just going to run that Stickles in between that from edge to edge. And then I colored up some of my little sea creatures. And originally I was going to use the turtle on this card, and I thought it was a little too busy. And so what I ended up doing was just using the crab and the seahorse. And so I'm going to go ahead and mat all of my pieces. The biggest mat is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. The white mat is about 1/8 of an inch smaller than that, or about 1/4 of an inch smaller than that. And then we have the main piece that we've been working on. And I'm just going to start adding all of my little elements. That little crab is so cute. I think he's my favorite one out of the bunch. And then I went ahead and heat embossed the sentiment and then popped that up. And I'll go ahead and add the seahorse. And I just had to use that turtle, and so what I ended up doing was creating another card, and I didn't do that one on camera because it's basically the same design as this card right here. As far as the background goes, I just picked a few different color of blue paper and a few different colors of brown paper and added that cute little turtle, and again sentiment from the Sea Quotes, a stamp and die set from Hero Arts. But these are really fun stamps and dies to work with, and dies especially are really fun because you have the option of just using a colored cardstock instead of actually coloring, which is always a good option to have. But that is it for me today. I hope you enjoyed these cards. Don't forget to subscribe to the Scrapbook Pal YouTube channel to get all the latest inspiration from the design team. Thanks so much for joining me, and I hope to see you next time.